Well, nice to be here to sort of give a bit of a sort of a view of what I did during the summertime. Um, the practical side of things is so much different than just sitting in your classroom and listening to lectures for 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, it's really, I suppose, putting some of the lessons you do learn into action a little bit. And it's one of those things where it's a mixture of doing things you like doing, things you don't like doing. Some things that are maybe not too bad, and some things that are very difficult. And response wise and stuff. Every place you go, you get different reactions to the gospel. And I mean, if you think about some of the islands that we were on, I mean, I did my placement in the Highlands with Jeff, and I guess the difference between the mainland, Tyree, and Harris, it's hard to believe that they're all in the same country. It really is quite hard to believe that they're all in the same country, and it was quite refreshing to be able to get out of the classroom and to be able to go and do some more practical things, actually getting out to do a bit of preaching and doing door to door work, or doing actual visits with people, because Jeff, when he's on the island, he does a lot of sort of pastoral type visits, and people that have come to the gospel tent mission meetings and all that. There, he will do a bit of checkup and see how people getting on. People who have maybe who are saved, just asking people how they're doing, or people who are not saved who have come to missions and stuff. It's whenever you're actually with Jeff, you realize how much he actually does do. It's like he definitely works you hard on that. I'll definitely say that. It's he's a busy man. But when I think back to first year at college and all the things that we did, like, it was an interesting year. It was a tough year. There was a lot of points where, especially when I got ill last year and had to go home and all, you just look back at some of the things that happened, and you just wonder how you got through some of the things sometimes, the amount of work you had to do and some of the things that is expected of you. But you can look back and you can see that the Lord was good. And so I had no idea where I wanted to go to on placement. I hadn't a clue. And it's easy for it's I suppose I kind of wanted to go to the Highlands. Originally, that's what I wanted to do, and so I ended up, I suppose, getting to go where I wanted to go, because I kind of wanted to do a little bit of preaching and that kind of thing. And the first, I mean, when I look back on my placement, I realised how crazy it was. We most days we were doing like 13 hour days, basically for 5 weeks, other than had a couple of days off. Like we really did, we did a lot. So the first week that I was with Jonathan on my placement, so the first week was on Tyree, and as he said before, it was a difficult place. I was thinking of a verse in scripture that came to mind. I was just sitting there, in Matthew's gospel, where he quotes from Isaiah, saying, "These people sat in darkness, saw a great light." In Tyree we came with the gospel, and but it was basically completely rejected. Nobody had any interest whatsoever. But that's what it felt like anyway. We were doing doors, and people didn't open their doors. Nobody was. I don't know. It's like it's kind of weird being in a place where you get onto the island and people know you're there, and they are expecting that at some point during the week their door is going to be knocked. And so when they hear a random knock on the door, nobody comes and answers the door. And there was hardly anybody open the door. Most of the people that did speak to us were people who weren't even from Tyree. There was a few people who had moved there from the mainland, and then there's a lot of people from other places and that, and it was quite a difficult, quite an eye-opening, I suppose, look into mission work. That somebody, you have to keep going to these places over and over and over and over again. And you know, Jeff, he's only there for a week at a time when he goes, and so it's only by the end of the week that you're there that you kind of actually start to maybe get a wee bit of inroads with people in a sense, and then you're away, and then it's maybe another 6 months till you're back again, and then you're back at that point again where you're having to build a rapport again with people, and it's just never ending cycle. And so I guess one of the lessons I have definitely learned is that, you know, when you look at the world that we're in today and how few people there is going to serve the Lord, you know, it's very difficult to get people to go and stay on these places. And Tyree could actually do with just somebody being there maybe 6 months at a time, so that you actually get to know people, and that you're not seen really as just a stranger or whatever, that you and people actually get to see what you're like, and you know, that you actually care about the people, that you're not just there to win them. I remember listening to a video years ago. It was a Paul Washer video, and he talked about how the first time that he was given out tracts in his university campus, he handed a tract, and the guy turned around and said to him, "Are you just trying to win me?" You know, that kind of way of thinking. You know, it's, you know, you don't want just to be on these places to, you know, just as a way of, you know, people think you're just there to see them saved, and that's it, that you're not really interested in them as people, you know what I mean? And so it takes quite a long time to build up that relationship with people, and for people to know who you are and understand why you're actually there. And so maybe that's part of the difficulty, is we're only there for such a short space of time. And you know, we had when we were on Tyree, we were there for about 6 days, and we did six evening gospel meetings, and I think we started on the Thursday evening and we finished on the Tuesday night, and I don't think there was any unsaved people in until the Monday night. And so, you know, you were preaching the gospel to people who are already saved constantly all the time, and if you could count on your two hands how many saved people was on Tyree, that's probably how many there is there. Maybe around 10. That's about it. And it was nice to see the unsaved people coming in, but you know, that was definitely one of the eye openers that I experienced myself, was that mission work, no matter what type it is really not easy. It's hard, and you know, it takes a long time to be able to build a relationship with people, and you know, it's not just you know, I think sometimes that we sometimes almost get, I know I've had this, where you get this idea of mission work that it's kind of glamorous sometimes. And sometimes when you read missionary books or you hear missionary stories and these things, it almost sounds like a glamorous life. And in some ways maybe it is in some things, but it's a hard graft. And you know, when you see how many people is stepping out for the Lord, there's fewer and fewer people doing it, and then there's fewer resources to be able to reach these people. And then these places are in generations where they've never heard the gospel. And it's much harder to go into those places and then tell people about the Lord again. And so I would say that was my thoughts on Tyree. I definitely couldn't live in Tyree. It's way too small. It's way too small. I mean, you can see one side from the other. It's too small. I was thinking about you know, if there's one policeman lives on the island, you know. There was a funny joke. There was one of them. Some of the folks were saying that the policeman and all the folks they're all in the pub one evening, and there was one fella, he went out. He was going out, and it looked as if he was getting into the car, you know, to drive away, and it was basically a decoy. He went back in, and all the people in the pub had all left, you know, and then they all got into the cars and drove away. You know, it's one of those places, if you were a thief or a criminal or something, it'd be quite difficult to get away. Beautiful place, but definitely the spiritual temperature in Tyree is very low, and um, it really could do with somebody on that island as a a strong set of believers who would be able to definitely bring the word of God to those people is what they really need. Um, but it was a good experience in ways, because I learned many different things. But very different from Harris, because that was the next place I was on. We had a week in between where we were back in Inverness, and we were sort of preparing the tent and loading the lorry, and it was again there's some work went into loading that. It's unbelievable how much goes into a tent. Like you've got the floor and all the structure of the tent, and then the tarps and carpets and electric cables and everything that goes in this tent. We all had to get onto this lorry, and I think it took us 2 days to load it. And it was it's a when you're working with other Christians, sometimes it can be it can be really interesting sometimes. Sometimes it drives you mad. But then on a week after that, then we got we headed off for Harris, and we got on to Harris. It's definitely a beautiful place, I will say that. It's definitely one of the most beautiful places I've been on. Very small, again, very mountainy. I don't know how anybody can live on it. I don't know how they survive. But it was a completely different place to Tyree. I suppose there's been revival in that place, sort of in living memory. I would say it's probably the place that is most like Northern Ireland I've been to so far over here, in terms of people knowing the gospel, knowing the need to be saved, knowing the gospel as well as I do, and yet aren't saved. That was an interesting thing, because you get so much of that at home. Again, one of the other side of that place is, again, we were in Leverborough, which is down on the south part of the island, and little community of about there's 5-6 churches. They're all Presbyterian, and they're all different denominations, and don't really seem to have much to do with each other. And it's again, even though they know they need to be saved, it's different in Tyree. Yet it was still quite difficult to get people interested in spiritual things. There's so much apathy in some of the places. It's unbelievable. And I guess that's kind of what comes from a place where people know they need to be saved, know the gospel, and yet are more interested in their own things that they're doing in their own lives. They're not interested in eternal things, they're only interested in things of now. And so we were on Tyree for 3 weeks. We got there on the Wednesday, and it took us 4 days basically to set up the place, pretty much 1.5 days to set up the tent. And then you have to do your door-to-door, and you have to do visits and all these things. And Harris was really that was a hard graft. It was a busy time. We were on the go basically for the entire 3 weeks, and even on Saturdays, me and Johnny, we had to go to one of the prayer unions up in Stornoway, and then you had to bring a word at that. So you're only getting half a Saturday off. Then Sunday you're into the meetings. You were morning meeting, then you had to go to church in the evening, and then you had to go to the tent mission, and it was a busy time. But we had quite a lot of unsaved people in to the tent missions. I haven't heard if there was anybody saved or not. I don't think there was. But one of the things that definitely did notice that we one of the things, the lessons I think the Lord actually did sort of speak to me on throughout the whole of the year was on the idea of sort of hospitality type things. I've preached on it once, and when we were on the island, there was people making food for us every day. There was on a Sunday there was this one particular family, Dan and Dolly. They brought us to their home every Sunday and made us looked after us and stuff. And and you could tell that us being there, and even though there wasn't really that many people saved, it did encourage them to keep on going with what had been started again, because there hadn't been a mission in that area for a very long time, And so the Church of Scotland folk and the Free Church folk were kind of sort of involved in the mission. And it kind of seemed to bring people together a little bit. And it definitely encouraged them and lifted them up that we were all there trying to do win and see people saved and see people won for the Lord. I would say that was one of the big encouragements of being in Harris. I guess, as Ryan said, the next thing that we did after that was coming home from placement was just, oh dear. We had our we had our car, the student car. Well, we thought it was a student car anyway. And so Wes Brewer, one of the other Faith Mission workers, he came up to preach on the second week. And when he was going home, his car broke down on him. His car broke down pretty much as he was turning down into the ferry terminal on Harris, so he didn't even get the car over the other side, back over the Skye again. And so he had no car, so he had to take our car home then. And so we were wondering how are we going to get back from Inverness back to the college. So we had to get a bus. I've never been on a 4-hour bus journey before. Ryan has never done long car journeys. I've done plenty of them, but I've never done a long bus journey. And a 4-hour bus journey from Inverness down to Edinburgh was a long sit. And because we had the car, I had all my stuff sort of just in the boot. I didn't really have it in bags, so I had to get a bin bag and put all my stuff in a bin bag. And so when I got off the bus, it looked like a boy who had just been through out of the house. That's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. But I guess it was a sort of a comical way to end the end placement. And you think when you finish a placement like that, it's so busy. You just turn around straight away, and then you're into the Edinburgh Convention and do an Edinburgh Convention setup, and it's amazing how much actually goes into setting up for the Edinburgh Convention. You come in, it just looks like a tent, and that's just what it looks like. But there's so much work goes into setting that place up for that, and it takes you basically 4 or 5 days to set the whole thing up. It's as a Faith Mission student, you really do get. You do work hard. I came from being a lorry driver, working 14, 15 hours a day, but Faith Mission, they know how to work you hard. And then the last thing that I mentioned was camps, and I've been at camps my whole life basically. I've always enjoyed camp as a camper and a leader. I guess it's one of those places where it allows a young person the chance to be in an environment where it's just basically they're hearing the word of God. There's other Christians around them, and in the world that we live in today, that's a good thing. When you think of some of the schools that people are going to and some of the things that people are involved in, and I did my camps one in Portadown, which is my local closest one to me, and then I did one in Newton Stewart and near Stranraer there, and I guess the one in Portadown was good, but I guess it was the one in Newton Stewart that really that was the first time I'd done a camp outside of Northern Ireland or Ireland, and I guess it really hit me the difference between maybe kids who maybe brought up in a culture where the Bible is still sort of more read, and we still go to Sunday school quite a lot, to some that don't. And there's just actually I was preaching in my own church at home this following Sunday when I got home, and there was just a few things that really spoke to me so deeply. What that one was there was just like thinking about the young lads that were there, and you know, camp for me whenever I was young, you couldn't get me to go to bed when I was at camp. I loved being up, and I was probably the last one to go to bed a lot of the time. And you like being up and eating sweets all night, and you're just being a young lad really. And whenever you were doing the sports and stuff, you wanted to win because you were competitive. And when I was at camp, it was probably the first time I've ever really noticed. I went into to get the few lads that was in my quiet time group out to do our quiet time that evening, and they were all in bed at 10 o'clock. I says, I know I'm not in camp in Ireland, I can tell you that, because this wouldn't be in bed at 10 o'clock. And I says, there's something wrong with you boys. and then later on that week, then they were doing sports and stuff, and the young lad was happy enough to lose at everything and lose the girls and everything. I couldn't understand what was going on. I really couldn't. And it sort of made me think of how culture and everything that can just influence people so much. And the passage that came to my mind that I spoke on was a passage that I've heard spoke on here before, which is, if you want to open your Bible, I might just read it out. I was sort of thinking along the lines of influence, and how culture can influence, and how we as Christians, even though there's not much of a Christian influence coming from above or from society and all, we can still be an influence to people around us. And it was just in 2 Kings chapter 18, which is the story of Hezekiah. It's just the first 8 verses of it. These verses really sort of spoke to me that week, and I really felt that through the things that I saw that week, that maybe as believers, trying to influence other people through the Word of God and through living our life in a biblical way, maybe that's really the answer to a lot of the problems. So we'll just start at verse 1 down to verse 8, and it says, "Now it came about in the 3rd year of Hoshea, the son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, became king. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father David had done. And he removed the high places, and broke down the sacred pillars, and cut down the Asherah. And he also broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until those days the sons of Israel burned incense to it, and it was called Nehushtan. And he trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that after him there was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor among those who were before him. For he clung to the Lord, and he did not depart from following him, but kept his commandments, which the Lord had commanded Moses. And the Lord was with him. Wherever he went, he prospered. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria, and did not serve him. And he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its territory, from watchtower to fortified city." And when you look at this passage, you look at Israel and the state that Israel is in, and the influence that Ahaz has had over the kingdom. And Judah was the part of the one of the kingdoms that came out of the split between Israel and Judah, and it had, wasn't always great, but they had a certain amount of good kings. But when they get to Ahaz, they have the worst king that they've had up until this point. And through his sin of worshipping at the high places and all these things, and also bringing foreign altars down into Jerusalem to worship foreign gods, he is sort of taking people away from looking where they should, and influencing people to worship foreign gods and to live in the way of foreign societies that Israel shouldn't have been doing. And he was very successful at it, because even the priests, he sent, when he went to Damascus to meet the king of Assyria, he saw the altar in Damascus, and he told the priest to build an altar in the same specification so that they could remove the bronze altar, which was a sign of, or a symbol of, the Assyrian god having defeated the God of Israel, in a sense. And so here we have this king who's meant to be the head over his people, meant to be the king who is to bring his people in the ways of God, but he hasn't. He's turned completely aside, and he's brought the people of God into worshipping false gods. And the question that I always wanted to know, because it says that Hezekiah was 25, he was a young man, and how, if his father is so wicked and so caught up in all these things, how did he know how to worship God? How did he know what the way of God was? How did he know what the commands of God was? And how did he know what was to do right before God? And I guess I'm not sure if it really is, but to me, it seems as if you look in verse 2, it says, and his mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And the word Abi is translated, and the meaning of the word is that Jehovah is her father. And it seems to me that maybe the reason why that little phrase is put in there, because maybe she was a godly woman, and she knew the ways of God, and she brought Hezekiah up in the ways of God, and that's how he knew how to obey God's commands and how to live for the Lord. And so here, Hezekiah, maybe when he becomes king, he has got a choice to make. Is he going to serve God? Is he going to walk with God and influence people in the ways of God? Or is he going to go in the same way that his father did? And, I'm sure there was a lot of influence from maybe the priest class again and the society around him to go in the same way that his father did. Maybe the society wanted him to worship false gods, and it would have been an easy thing for him to do. But we can be very thankful that we have this example of a man who said no, that he wasn't going to do that. We can be thankful that he took the example from his mother, and it says he did right in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father David had done. And it's the first time that you actually see this phrase in Scripture, that he did right in all that his father David had done. Because with all the other kings that had done good things, they maybe removed some of the high places. They maybe did a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Maybe they walked with the Lord well in one area, but they didn't do it across the board. This is the first time where a king of Judah did the whole thing, and he removed them all. And it says he trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel, so that after him there was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor among those who were before him. And he clung to the Lord. He did not depart from following him, but kept his commands, which the Lord had commanded Moses. He trusted in the Lord. He wasn't interested in trusting his own abilities. He wasn't interested in maybe trusting the sensibilities from the priest. He wasn't interested in turning to anybody else. What he was interested in was bringing Judah back to the way the Lord wanted Judah to be. And the idea of him clinging to the Lord is the same word that is used in 2 Samuel whenever one of the mighty men, his hands clave to the sword. The sword left the imprint. So he had held the sword so tightly that the sword print was left in his hand. And this is what Hezekiah was doing. He was holding and clinging to the Lord to not let him go. And we can see through the rest of the story of Hezekiah that he put these things into action. He removed the high places and the sacred places, and he removed the bronze serpent, this thing that had been given by God for to heal the nation. And yet they had turned this good thing into a thing to worship. And he got rid of it. He just got rid of everything out of the place that shouldn't have been there, so that people could be focused on the Lord. And maybe this, in our society, I was just thinking about them young lads, maybe they do come from Christian homes, but maybe in school, they don't have a lot of, Christian friends, or there's not much influence from that part of society. And, it'd be so good. We can see here what can happen with just that small bit of influence in somebody's life. It can give light to know where to go and how to worship God and how to live for God. and all these things, even though all of society is crumbling down around them. And maybe we ourselves here tonight, all in our own circles, and that we mix, and places that we go for work and different things. You've people who are not saved and who don't know God, and maybe we as individuals can influence them in some small way, that they can see that the way of the world is not the way to go, and that's one of the reasons why people are in so much despair. But when they come to the Lord and they cling to the Lord and trust in the Lord to do right in the Lord brings victory in their life over sin and all these other things. And that's the sort of thoughts that came to my mind out of this passage was, how are we influencing people around us? How am I influencing people around me? Do people see Christ in me, or do people see bits of the world in me still, or am I trying to be like Christ? And so, that's maybe one of the main things I've learned from the summertime, is how much we can actually influence people in the Lord. And so, maybe that's a good place just to allow the Lord to speak into our hearts. And I'll just end there. So I just thank you very, very much for listening tonight, and I hope that it's been somewhat of an encouragement to you all. So thank you very much.